White people love Wayne Brady because he makes Brian Gumble look like Malcolm X.
Hello, this is Holland Timmons, otherwise known as the Istari, and today I am going to review some literature I finished in December of 2018. There was just so much literature, it took me a while to compile my thoughts on it and just let it stew around for a while. And I'm going to tell you a little story before we begin, but let me tell you what we're reviewing is the Carl Barks Library. As you can see, the complete Carl Barks Library. The story is, growing up I was a Carl Barks fan. My mom got me hooked on comic books with an issue of Uncle Scrooge and, like, an issue of Donald Duck Adventures and Walt Disney Comics and Stories. It was great. Those were great issues. Anyway, when I was turning 13, my mom went to a guy we called Nate. His name is Nate. He worked at Comics Dungeon. He later owned it, by the way. But my mom said, I'm looking for a present for my son, and he said, oh, okay, well, he should, get this. This is the Carl Barks Library, Uncle Scrooge. So she bought me this for my 13th birthday. I received it, and I was like, this is awesome. So I'm reading through all the books, and I'm really liking it. And then, I realize this is number 3, and there are 10. And it actually advertises the 10, in the back of these books, I believe. I don't know. It's just somewhere. Yeah, right here, as you can see, it advertises the other sets. She didn't know about the other sets. She thought set number 3 was it. So, as she said, they all have these cool paintings Barks did of his characters. But yeah, as my mom said, had I known what I was starting, I wouldn't have gotten him the books. So, anyway, she got me volume 3, and it set me on a lifelong quest to complete the library. And it lasted me about half my life until I was about 25, 26. And then I spent the next I think I was 25, 24, 20. I spent pretty much the next 10 years reading this. I would have read it faster if I could devote several months. I could read this in no time. The problem was I was moving around a lot. I had college and lots of family drama. It was not conducive to reading, but I finished it, and now I'm going to share my thoughts with you at long last. This is some of the best literature ever written. I would say that in terms of how well written it is, I would compare it in a way to comic book Shakespeare. I really would. He's essentially the Shakespeare of comic books. What he does with these cartoon ducks, what he adds to the universe, because before, it was Donald Duck, Carl Barks was kind of co-responsible for creating Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and then, as he went on to comics, he created Duckburg, the Money Bin, Gyro Gearloose, Magica Dispel, the Beagle Boys, Flintheart Glomgold. He's invented so much. Neighbor Jones, I freaking love the Neighbor Jones comics, which I'll get into. But, with these comics, he didn't know it, but he invented a new element in these comics. Took scientists years and years to come up with that element he had invented in here. And he also invented a new way of raising sunken ships. If you go to a episode of Mythbusters, they actually try to test out what Carl Barks invented in here. So they started flooding ping pong balls into the sunken hull of the ship. They calculated how many ping pong balls it would take to raise the ship. It took less than what they calculated. Barks is that good. So, a lot, as you'll see, Uncle Scrooge. We'll go into Uncle Scrooge and what he inspired later, and then, I'll probably wrap up. with the story. So, this is Uncle Scrooge Volume 3, but we're going to go over here to Donald Duck number 1. You might think like this is like the slipcase is just Donald Duck and the Mummy's Ring. Well, you'd be wrong. As you can see, like there is Donald Duck and the Mummy's Ring here. That's how Barks was originally drawing Donald. But first starts with Donald Duck finds pirate gold. It's a Donald Duck pirate comic. Donald Duck goes to find pirate gold in a story that was originally supposed to be a Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy movie. It's originally going to be a theatrical movie starring those characters, but for some reason or another they scrapped it, and so boom, we got Donald Duck in Carl Barks' first comic. As you can see, like he goes on to have other adventures like Donald Duck and Frozen Gold, Sheriff of Bullet Valley, Ghost of the Grotto. It's like Lost in the Andes, Search for the Square Eggs. That's a great one. Yeah. Anyway, as you can see, like each volume is a box set, and it has 3 books in it, each over 100 pages, possibly over 200 pages. I need to check. I'm not going to check right now. Donald Duck in Dangerous Disguise. Yeah, there's like... What I like about the early Barks comics is like he wasn't supposed to do this, but he would like put humans in the duck world. So it's like Barks' universe, if you really boil it down, it's our universe, but it's humans wandering around where there are ducks, pigs, bears, like all these creatures that are anthropomorphic. And like there are even animals that are not anthropomorphic. And yeah, it's really great. Anyway, these are the Donald Duck adventures. It's where Donald Duck is going on like globe-trotting adventures with his nephews. And then like during a Christmas issue, like Carl Barks created their mean old Uncle Scrooge. I love Uncle Scrooge. Many people have their favorite heroes they can describe, you know. Captain America, patriotic. Superman, noble. Batman, vengeful. What's my hero? Cheap. So, as you can see, he has the monkey grinding as like Scrooge dances for the money. So why should the monkey get the money? It should be Scrooge. So, as you can see, like, very, very cool character. These comics inspired DuckTales, just so you know. If you like DuckTales, you'll like the comics a lot more. Uncle Scrooge, as I promised the story, the Uncle Scrooge comics and the Donald Duck adventures were particularly formal in like creating Indiana Jones and the whole Indiana Jones series. Like opening scene of Raiders, it's straight out of an Uncle Scrooge comic. It's like blatant, but you know, that's cool because I'm gonna have to find it. It's volume 9. Yeah, okay. Volume 9, there's a picture of Steven Spielberg alongside Carl Barks. Yeah, Spielberg and Lucas were fans of Carl Barks. But if you're outside the US, you know how big Barks is globally. If you're inside the US, you have no idea how popular this guy is in his literature. If you're an English major, I would like to know if they teach you that Carl Barks is like the best-selling author of the 20th century. Because nobody in the 20th century has sold more books than Barks has. But enough about gloating Barks. As you can see, like here's Scrooge finding the Flying Dutchman. It's like the Scrooge stories are excellent. They're pure adventure. They teach you economics. They teach you history. It's really great. Well, they get you interested in history. They teach you enough about history, it gets you interested in history. And you know what? It worked on me. So, there you go. As you can see, lots of comics. I'm not going to go through every one, maybe I should. I'll probably do a separate video and attach it at the end of me going through each separate one. So if you want to stay tuned for that, that'd be great. But as you can see, like later here is the Donald Duck family. where it deals with the ancillary characters of the Donald Duck universe. For example, you got stuff like Daisy Duck comics. There was only one of those. You'll see why. Anyway, then there was Grandma Duck comics. There's Gyro Gearloose comics. Junior Woodchuck comics. I love the Junior Woodchucks, by the way. I myself started my own chapter when I was a kid of the Junior Woodchucks. We had like 1 or 2 meetings max. I wish we could have continued, but yeah, well, what can you do? Finally, we go to here. Walt Disney's Comics and Stories. This is more of the adventures in suburban life. Instead of globetrotting adventures like Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge, you have more adventures in suburban life and suburbia, where you get to know the denizens of Duckburg. And like, yeah, if you're expecting to run into Mickey Mouse, Goofy, you know, all those characters, if you're expecting to see Darkwing Duck or expecting to see the Gargoyles, they don't exist in here. This is purely Donald Duck, Uncle Scrooge, Barks' universe. I think at total he mentions Mickey Mouse once. And even then, like, he later admitted that must have been a mistake. So, yeah, these ducks exist in our universe. As you can see, they're at Disneyland. It's great. Actually, there's a cool story where Scrooge is at the steamboat ride on Disneyland. And he's recounting his youth as like a steamboat operator on the Mississippi. It's great. Also, there's a really cool moment I was reading through here. I have to reread again, but like I'm pretty sure there's a moment where you get to see my hometown in the comics. That's pretty cool. You get to see my home in the comics. Okay, well. You can imagine, I'm not gonna, if you watch other videos, you know, you get to see Whidbey Island. That's awesome. I think they visit Clinton, and like since they're in Clinton, you look across the Puget Sound, which he drew, there's Whidbey Island. That's awesome. That's my hometown. It's like, anyway. My original hometown, though. Yeah, I'm not gonna tell you where I am now. Anyway, it's Walt Disney Comics and Walt Disney Comics. So that's like the 10 different volumes I read. Now, the story. I guess I should show you the story. I should tell you the story. I'm not the only fan of Carl Barks. There's like something you guys probably most likely love. And I love it too, but we wouldn't have it in the way it is if it wasn't for Barks. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the father of manga and anime. He was a huge Carl Barks fan. In fact, he was such a huge Carl Barks fan, he based his drawing style off of the Carl Barks ducks. And like through years of like influence and re-influence and permutation through culture, the Carl Barks ducks turned into the anime we have now. And honestly, that's why they have big eyes and those exaggerated features. It's like, it's Carl Barks ducks, you know? So yeah, that's why we have anime the way it is now. And again, like, this is some of the best literature that I've ever read. I've read quite a bit of literature. I read the greats of comics, and, you know, I was talking about Alan Moore, but, like, and Alan Moore has complex writing, but my God, the writing in this, the stories told, it's fantastic. I can't highly recommend Barks enough. There are essays in here. There are, like, many essays from many different people, from people like Will Eisner to George Lucas, to, not Michael Eisner. Michael Eisner ran Disney. Will Eisner is the guy who revolutionized comics. He kind of established the industry and the format, but Barks did his own thing, and that was the genius of Barks. He didn't follow Will Eisner. Barks did his own thing, and he made it work. So that shows you. Barks was an inductee into the Will Eisner Hall of Fame. He was one of the initial, alongside Jack Kirby and Will Eisner, of course. Trying to remember What was I saying? Oh yeah, there are a lot of different essays in here from archaeologists, just like so many people who have written essays about Barks, and they're peppered throughout each of the 30 books. And you learn a lot, not just about Barks, but also about his art style, his growing up, many different things. Like, you learn about how in-depth Barks did his research. He always had a copy of National Geographic on hand when he was writing his stories. So, like, he knew what he was talking about, like, worldwide, even though he never set one foot outside of the U.S., like, during most of his life, if not his entire life. He never took a step outside of the U.S. I think he went to Disneyland, France once. Like, I don't know who else did. Okay, well, that is Carl Barks. He died at age 99 in the year 2000. I remember because I was heartbroken when my mom saw a small blurb in the corner of the website search engine. Said, you know, U.S. comic book artist Carl Barks did. My world shattered when I saw that small blurb. It was international news everywhere else. It was international news. Well, anyway. I feel quite alone in the U.S. as a Carl Barks fan. How about you? Well, anyway. If you are in the U.S., hopefully I convinced you that Carl Barks is definitely something worth checking out. It may be kiddie comics, but it's not. You may think these are ducks. By the time you get to book 3, you'll be thinking they're humans. They're just drawn like ducks. Yeah. Okay, well, cool. This is the Istari. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Anything helps. It really does. As you can see, keep reading. Everybody keep reading. It's good to read. And like, if you want to get your kids hooked on reading, Carl Barks is the way to go. It really is. If you want to teach your kids anything about, like, if they want to get your kids interested in history, other cultures, or economics or anything, Carl Barks is the way to go. So yeah, very good resource for parents. Please comment, like, share, subscribe. As I said, anything helps. This is the Istari, Holland Timmons, wishing you a good one. Peace. Okay, this is Holland Timmons, and as I said, if you kept up until the end, I'm going to show you each and every cover. As you can see, this is Donald Duck and the Mummy's Ring. Great story, by the way. It's a great story. I'd highly recommend it. It's Barks' first original Donald Duck story that wasn't based off a discarded story. You're getting things at the end, don't worry. Lost in the Andes, Sheriff of Bullet Valley, Ghost of the Grotto, Donald Duck in Frozen Gold. Donald Duck finds pirate gold. Donald Duck and the Mummy's Ring. Sort those out later. Donald Duck in Dangerous Disguise. Donald Duck, the Crocodile Collector. Donald Duck in A Christmas for Shacktown. Donald Duck and the Golden Helmet. Donald Duck in Trick or Treat. Donald Duck in Ancient Persia. Donald Duck and the Pixelated Parrot. That's a pretty good one. Actually, all of these are pretty good. It's, okay. We have covered the Donald Duck section on Uncle Scrooge. Excuse me. Uncle Scrooge. Remember, kids, capitalism is a good thing. It's a very good thing. Why does communism not work? Because it does. I don't think it takes into account. In fact, I'm pretty damn sure it doesn't take into account that supply and demand is universal no matter what form of government you have. There's supply and demand. You always got to take that into account. And supply and demand is what fuels economics, and particularly capitalism, which is why capitalism works so well and communism doesn't. Supply and demand. There's more to it than that, of course. I'm simplifying it. But, like, at its basics, that's why capitalism works so well. And I'm not saying, like, capitalism doesn't have its shortcomings, but, like, we've offset that by just a bit of socialism. The fact America has made socialism work has really ticked off, like, the USSR, because, you know, things didn't turn out so great for them. How did we make socialism work? By balancing it with capitalism. And Uncle Scrooge is one of the ultimate capitalists. In fact, there's a theoretical number, but he reached it. Uncle Scrooge is worth 11 octillion dollars in 1940s money. With inflation, I have no idea how much that is now. And I don't think any computer can calculate it. At least not a computer we have currently. Well, anyway. As you can see, these are just frickin' great. Frickin' great comics. If you're out there and you're a socialist or a communist, sorry to burst your bubble. But hopefully you'll subscribe. Uncle Scrooge, as you can see. It's like so many adventures, you know? So many adventures I've read. And it's great. It's absolutely great stuff. To be fair, I really hate simplifying things, so I'm sorry I had to simplify it that much. People need to realize things are more complex than, like, they initially realize. Everything's more complex than you initially realize. But this isn't about that. This is about Donald Duck. And, yeah. This is... There's Grandma Duck, Uncle Scrooge, Donald's nephews, Cousin Gladstone Gander. I didn't mention Gladstone or many of the ancillary characters. I'm going to go into that right now while I show you the rest of these covers. Gladstone Gander started out as kind of a cheat and a fraud, and later developed into somebody who was, like, insanely lucky. You know, insanely lucky. Like, borderline on miracle lucky. And, as much as Donald put in the effort and tried to beat Gladstone, Gladstone's luck always won out. And, yeah, Karl Barks' wife hated Gladstone. She absolutely despised Gladstone because she knew several girls that were like Gladstone. She hated them. Anyway, then there is Neighbor Jones. As I said, the Neighbor Jones thing would be something. Donald Duck has a neighbor he always fights with, in epic battles, by the way, called Neighbor Jones. Like, they play such tricks on each other. It's and those are always good comics, of course, the Neighbor Jones comics. Then there's the Beagle Boys. They always got like 176, and then it's a combination of 176, 671, whatever. 617, all of them. My favorite one is 176, 671, but it's because opposite. There's a name for it. I know there's a name for it. I don't know the name. I should learn it, memorize it. Palindrome? I don't know. It's probably not a palindrome. Okay. Anyway, this is really great because as you follow Donald Duck throughout the comics, he always has a job. He's got a different job every comic. He has so many jobs and he's great at them all. And then somehow he always spectacularly fails at them by the end. And, like, the thing about Karl Barks comics is teaches you about economics, history, and capitalism, and all that stuff, like other cultures. But as I said that before, yeah. What else it teaches you is that life is rarely ever fair. Sometimes more to others. And like with Donald Duck doing all this hard work, like Donald rarely ever wins in the end, except for like once or twice. And he wins in the end, and it's due to his own hard work. Like, I really like that. And you rarely get it in Karl Barks comics, because life rarely works out like that. So, and that's the lesson he's imparting. You know, life isn't fair. It's like, there's more messages, of course. Like, honestly, with any literature, people read into it whatever they want to, for the most part. Like, there's a story being told, there's definitely something being told, but, like, sometimes people just read into things, and I think that's where you get a lot of Barks haters, you know? It's like, just read into things. And honestly, like, at one point I was starting to read into it, too, and then, like, I learned, and I was like, oh, he isn't wrong, he's actually goddamn right. So, yeah, it's like, knowledge is power, remember that. Knowledge is power, and knowledge can change your perception on things. Like, the more you know, the more your perception on things changes. And, yeah. But, it's like, great frickin' comics. Art. Checkers with jumping beans. You always had great gag covers, you know. Barks always did a lot of gag covers. And, I think I want to show you something really quickly. As you can see, like, there are these covers right here. It's like, the comics are black and white, of course. Very adventurous. But again, you have to understand, like, these are the adventures in suburban life, if you're actually seeing some of these. Yeah. As I said, like, there are also photographs, black and white photographs and essays, which, again, are really cool. Done by many experts and people in the field. So, let's see, a second. Okay. Finally, the last one. It's been nice having this conversation with you. Probably shut this off long ago when you heard me preach. Don't worry, I'd shut me off too. But hopefully you stick around. As you can see, that's great. That's a great gag. Donald looks in the mirror and he sees Uncle Scrooge. There's a story in there somewhere. There's definitely a story in there. I'm already kind of getting a story. I should write that down. Okay, well, anyway, here's the thing. If you're ever stuck in writing, like, if you're a writer, like, read these comics, especially if you're a writer. It will help you evolve your writing style. And if you are a writer and you have writer's block, or you can't think your way out of, like, a conundrum you wrote, like, I have several different methods I use, but, like, my last stopgap measure is consulting the Karl Barks library. There's always an answer to something in the Karl Barks library. He did 20 years of comics, over 500 stories. There's bound to be an answer to your problem. But it's never failed me. I can't promise it. It'll never fail you, but yeah, again, great resource for writers, great resource for kids wanting to read, great resource for comic book collectors or people interested in comic books, people who are interested in DuckTales and want to read, like, the real stuff, like the really good stuff. DuckTales is great, I love DuckTales, but, like, it doesn't even compare to the quality of Karl Barks' Duck comics. Anyway, last thing, I'm currently reading this, Big Book of Barney Bear, and the unavailable Karl Barks. Hopefully I'll finish these soon, but I'm also reading a lot of Shakespeare. I'm reading a lot. I kind of made a New Year's resolution to read more, and yeah. So I will hopefully do a review of these. Yes, Karl Barks did more than the Ducks, but to be fair, like, Karl Barks also had inclination to do a human comic. He wanted to do a comic about humans, much like Prince Valiant, but like his own thing. And in a way, I kind of wish he did, you know? I don't want him to, it's not like I don't want him to have done the comics he had done, but like, I just feel bad that like he retired from comics before doing that human comic he wanted to do. He's, you know, he didn't bother to do the human comic, he's retired, and, you know, good for him. I mean, he went on to go painting his characters, and then when he couldn't paint his characters anymore, he went on to paint other ducks and fairy tales. And then he got permission to do his ducks again, and yeah, he's spent like a long time of his life painting, and that's good. You know, he developed a hobby that made him a lot of money. More money than the comics did. What I love is that Carl Barks was at a ceremony accepting an award, and he accepted the award and he says, "I'd like to thank all of my fans, who were small children, who bought my comics for 12 cents and grew up and sold them for many thousands of dollars." Okay,